Well, welcome to our midweek study, first of 2025, and let's open with a word of prayer. Dear gracious, loving God of heaven and earth, we know that things are picking up a pace and that this earth is moving rapidly towards the climax of history. And we just ask that you will continue to watch over each of us in the movement, each of us on the Zoom tonight, those that haven't been able to join. And we just ask for your wisdom, your guidance, your instruction. We want to also hold up the German camp meeting that is starting tomorrow, and asking that you keep everyone safe, bless all those who are attending, be with the presenters, particularly Elder Parminder. I'm not certain fully who else is presenting, but we just ask for your blessing on each one. We also want to hold up the fires going on in California. People evacuated, lots of loss of property. And we know that these events, whether they be flood, fire, tornadoes, wind, all the various natural disasters have also been accelerating and will continue to until the close of this Earth's record and the return of our dear Savior. So bless us, keep us all safe, keep our minds astute and our bodies healthy. And we just ask that your presence will bless us this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. And I'm going to begin. Let me just rearrange the desktop. Okay. There we go. I am actually going to share screen first. And you can see a whiteboard behind me, and I know it's a lot easier to see if it's on slides, but at any rate, we'll. Okay, it's interesting. Fast tracks, that's kind of cool. I'll apologize because I know my mouse ends up scooting things forward sometimes ahead of my prompt, but at any rate. So part 2 of going through Elder Terry's study, I am going to have us begin with, whoops, there we go, with reading this quote. And I know we had a part of it, one of the paragraphs earlier. Trying to get rid of that. There we go. The final overthrow of all earthly dominions is plainly foretold in the word of truth, in the prophecy uttered when sentence from God was pronounced upon the last king of Israel, is given the message. Thus saith the Lord God, remove the diadem and take off the crown, exalt him that is low and abase him that is high. I will overturn it, and it shall be no more until he come whose right it is, and I will give it him. The crown removed from Israel passed successively to the kingdoms of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. God says, it shall be no more until he come whose right it is, and I will give it him. That time is at hand. Today, pardon me, today the signs of the times declare that we are standing on the threshold of great and solemn events. Everything in our world is in agitation. Before our eyes is fulfilling the Savior's prophecy of the events to precede his coming. Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. The present is a time of overwhelming interest to all living. Rulers and statesmen, men who occupy positions of trust and authority, thinking men and women of all classes, have their attention fixed upon the events taking place about us. They are watching the strained, restless relations that exist among the nations. They observe the intensity that is taking possession of every earthly element, and they realize that something great and decisive is about to take place, that the world is on the verge of a stupendous crisis. We're basically 14 days away from, 12 days. It was 14 days, 2 days ago. 12 days away from Donald Trump's inauguration. And just taken out of context, we could read the last part of that sentence, that the world is on the verge of a stupendous crisis, could apply. But a question I just want to ask quickly, and for whoever wants to open their mic and just weigh in. Are we in the agitation of the Sunday law? Or are we in the Sunday law dispensation? Because, of course, the agitation of the Sunday law is the tail end of the previous dispensation, if we want to look at it that way, or it's a part of the dispensation we're still in that has yet to come up to Sunday law, or is at Sunday law and we're just getting ready to begin the Sunday law to close up probation dispensation. So are we in the agitation of the Sunday law, or are we in the Sunday law to close of probation dispensation? Anyone want to give their thought?
I can, but I don't. I believe we are in the Sunday law. So if we're in the Sunday law, the agitation of the Sunday law would have been pre-Sunday law time period. So before the Sunday law started, which I'm leaning towards July 18 with Elder Terry's presentation. I know other people have leaned towards other things, and I really don't know, but that's just where I'm going with that. And so for the Sunday law to be now as of July 18, I'm just going to verbally put it that way, then the agitation has been all up until that time, because does the agitation continue while we're in the Sunday law, or are we just in the Sunday law now waiting for the next element to happen, like the loud cry?
Well,
That's
and that's a good question,
how I'm weighing in.
Ally,
Yeah.
because it does, the answer to that question is indicative of where we are in the stream of time, for sure. Agitation behind us, Sunday law, and I believe if we go by the Boston Concord, Exeter, shut door model. The next one wouldn't be Loud Cry because it would be Boston, or rather Concord, because a Sunday law, pardon me, a Sunday law is a Boston. Let me rephrase that. The fourth waymark in a dispensation is both shut door and Boston, an unsealing of a message. So the next waymark to that would be a Concord. The next waymark to that, third waymark, would be an Exeter, and then it would come up to again another shut door test. Okay, Ali, very nicely said and very clear what you did say. So anybody else want to weigh in? Lucas or Annabelle? Gotcha. Nora?
Uh, I would say we're in the Sunday law because the two strongest arguments are the date for these two strongest arguments have already passed. One argument is November 5th. That's already passed. And of course, July 18th is gone already. So whichever way, we're already in the Sunday law.
Okay. Straight and to the point, Lucas. Thank you very much for that. Anybody else want to respond?
So there's no consensus in the movement of whether we are in the Sunday law. There is, as Lucas says, two main points, either July or November 5, July 18 or November 5, and that is based on the name of Quintus Fabius Maximus Gurgis. But there's also, so there's those markers in the sense that Fabius is representing voting, and 2024 was a year of voting. Now, as the marker, this is something that I think we have to continue to develop to see what is the big Sunday law. I remember what Elder Parmenter did a few weeks ago, I think, with the IPR. And it was to show us that prior Sunday law, there were Sunday laws, and after Sunday law, there are Sunday laws. But the big marker, the big SL, it's something that we are still looking at. But with all the studies that came out, whether it is Elder Terry, whether it is Aaron, or I can't remember his name.
Pedro, even earlier. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
his went past
Went
the
past.
time, right?
Exact. Even though there's differences in the date, I think everybody at least agree, if I can say that, that we are in the time period of the Sunday law.
Okay, thank you, Katja, very much for that. And Annabelle or Nora, either of you want to respond at all before I move on? Oh, and I
a very
probably,
serious
go
thought.
ahead.
It's
Go
just a
ahead,
very
Annabelle.
serious thought to be in the latter rain time period. And yeah, we've heard all about the latter rain so much during our lives and during in the movement, and now it's hard to believe that that time is here. And I think for me, I have to brush up on everything to expect in the latter rain time period.
Yep, but I thought we were in the latter rain time period for quite a long time. like the early rain, like I'm looking at the overall line, the big line. And the early rain, the plowing time with 1989 to 9/11, I'm probably not saying that right, but in that time period. And then we had the latter rain after that. And then we had, or the early rain, the plowing, early rain and latter rain. Like I think we've been in the latter rain for quite a long time. So I'm not sure.
Are you talking about the Priest's Line Alley? Because that wasn't the true latter rain time period.
I don't, I, mm, maybe, maybe I am talking about the priest's line. But I
Yes.
mean,
Well,
Mhm.
sorry, people have been talking about us being in the latter rain for a long time. So I assumed we have been in the latter rain for a long, long time. So what do you mean then? I don't know what you mean.
well, Ally, I'll be sharing actually a little bit later on, I'll share a slide and we'll maybe continue at that point, little clarifying this, what Annabelle has interjected and I want to give Nora opportunity. Did you want to respond at all? You don't have to.
No, I don't think so. I'm still learning and I don't have enough piece together to really.
No, and that's fair enough. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to do just a very quick review, all on slides. So Elder Terry's study and diagrammed out the Acts 27, 2 ships. We spoke about, hopefully that disappears, 2 ships, 2 journeys, 2 lines, and give us the parable of the story of it's gonna go away. Oh, whatever. Anyway, and then last time I did a very quick covering off of a portion of the story of Pyrrhus, basically to get us to the name Quintus Fabius Maximum Gurges that Elder Terry spends a fair amount of time with. And the Acts 27 journey is foundational to a lot of truths that have come out in this last dispensation, right? Sunday law, pardon me, 9/11, 2001 to the Sunday law. And that's it. We've got lots of information that I will get to. The Daniel breakup or breakdown, rather, I meant, of all that happened with the Grecian Empire. And it was interesting when this is Alexander the Great's Greek Empire, when Elder Harminder in South Africa there, and one of the messages, earlier messages, ended up making the comment, Greece was a worldwide empire. And I think he said the phrase, unlike the others. I was intrigued because I thought, oh, I never really paid attention to that. Was there a little bit of a difference and so on? But at any rate, that was Alexander the Great's empire, and the mention of some of the other areas like Thrace up in the north, Macedon, the Peloponnese is the sort of like the fingers little peninsula portion of Greece. And anyway, it comes into play with the story of Pyrrhus, some of the different areas, and that's it. This gives the breakdown. Daniel eventually cutting out all the noise goes from, I believe it was 12 generals, or maybe even more, but down to 4. And there we've got Cassander's kingdom in Macedonia and Greece, the Seleucid kingdom. Eventually, all 4 of them claimed to be king after Antigonus had been the one that had started that off. But Seleucus, the territory that he ended up with, and Lysimachus in the see, he was Thrace and western part of Asia Minor, and then Ptolemy down in Egypt, the Egyptian area, and a part leading into Asia. So the story of the control of Coal Syria, in particular, a portion, as you can see on this map, of wasn't really a part of Syria in a sense. It was a term that was used at times. So anyway, it is a portion of Syria. We'll come to that a little bit more. And of course, this is a modern day map of some of these different territories and areas, geographical areas, and how they would equate for the nations of today. You know, and we see Turkey, Tunisia, Libya, Tunisia, the Carthage, and some of the warfare that Pyrrhus enters into in Sicily, trying to rout going to war with the Carthaginians. We've got Greece, obviously, and Turkey, Thrace, now Bulgaria, and Syria itself, and its connection to Iraq, and obviously Iran, or further east, but and then the Middle East itself, which doesn't show up too clearly there because of this size, a little bit smaller. Israel, Lebanon, and so on. And so my intention this evening was to go through Acts 27 somewhat, go through Pyrrhus and some of the history and the various battles, starting with Ipsus, Heraclea, Asculum, Beneventum, and Argos. But as I prefaced right at the very beginning, I'm actually going to change tact a little wee bit and interject something else. And that's what's on the board behind me. Well, actually, if I flip it over. So I am going to flip it over, so forgive me for a second. Oh, pardon me, I did flip it over earlier, yes. Okay, so further thoughts on Sunday law. And I'm not sure if it comes in large. If you're on a phone, it probably doesn't very well. But I think it's at least a little bit clearer in a sense than if I was just to take it off screen share and just have my whiteboard there. And sometimes that seems to be a little more blurry with the lettering. I haven't mastered a digital whiteboard yet, but at any rate, Ally, coming back to your thoughts there a little bit earlier, we've got on that top line, the line of 144,000, and I didn't actually put on it there in large, but it is down on this smaller one with the blue lettering indicating the 144,000 and then the fractal lines. But the plowing is 1989 to 2001. For the 144,000, the early rain is from 2001 all the way through to Sunday Law. And then the latter rain is that Sunday Law to close of probation dispensation. And with the harvest coming after the close of probation, the Daniel 12:1, Michael stands up, close of probation on the world. And then, of course, the second advent. And the line of the priests, and if we remember correctly, the priest line only goes to 2021, fairly small there for you to see, but it says second advent 2021. And that is the point at which at Panium, where we transferred from the line of the priests onto the line of the 144,000. And so that's where we would place ourselves now, because the priest line ended at 2021 with Panium. And so we would have ourselves on the Sunday Law, just before it, just after it, wherever it is that at the moment we think we are. And as Katja pointed out, there isn't consensus in the movement, nor has there been a movement position stated to this point in time. And the Levites, tell me something about the Levites. Anything that comes to your mind. Tell me something about the Levites. Anybody?
I have a question about the Levites.
Okay.
Okay,
Go for
I
it, Ally.
fear for my life at this moment because I've never believed there were Levites, like actual people coming in from the SDA church into our movement, even when Elder Tess was going on about it for a while, and people are all excited, yada yada. But I never believed that it'll actually happen, and simply because it was a hard, hard call for the Adventist church to come in the movement during the 25-20 time period when we all came in, or some people came in, a lot of people came in 2014, like literally, like I'm speaking literally, because we all had an experience when we came in. A lot of people were just fellowship, a lot of people, somebody laughing or coughing or crying, I apologize. But anyways, I never thought there were going to be Levites coming into this movement, especially with the hard facts that they needed to address or do or whatever. And so few of us are in the movement now, like based on that. Some are trickling in still, but I don't know. Like, so maybe I failed that test because I didn't believe in it. Did I fail that test, do you think? So that's my question. I feel bad if I did because maybe that's a loss on my soul. I have no idea.
I have an answer, Ally, but I'll give opportunity. Does anybody else want to provide an answer or elaborate on what Ally has said? Okay, Ally, my quick answer would be no. You have not failed a test. You did not put a blot on your soul. And leaving aside the facetiousness, the Levites, what we came to understand, and I know you agree with this because you probably did earlier, are not coming in as a group. And therefore, I think in part that's why Elder Terry leaves the Levite line, the fractal line, right out in her study and just does priests and Nethinim. And of course, she puts more of an emphasis on Nephilim in her studies, but for obvious reasons. But at the same time, the Levites not coming in as a group, and notwithstanding, we're going to have some individuals that have, as happened in previous dispensations, that do come in. Nora, you probably are feeling that applies to you. But someone like Nora comes in as a priest,
Yeah,
not as a Levite.
as a priest, exactly. And that's what I
Yes.
meant. Some people trickled in, but okay, that's interesting that you said that Terry leaves it off on her presentations. It sounds like I'm really far behind, and maybe that's an accurate assumption, but I am trying to stay caught up somewhat too. Maybe I've had a busier year than I thought, but anyways, thank you, Debbie. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
And
I
voter
have a
council.
question.
Yeah.
So why does Nora come in as a priest if she comes in at the end of the Levites' time period?
Because we are on the line of the 144,000 from 2021 on. And therefore it is, I mean, we originally were teaching it would be priests and Levites that would be the 144,000, because it would be, former Adventist people already that had grounding in Seventh-day Adventism. But anybody that comes in, do you remember Elder Parminder's one study where he said, all Adventists are Levites. It's just that there's some good ones and some bad ones. I mean, we use those moral kind of designations just for a handle to attach a name, to make it distinguishable what we're talking about. But he was saying all Adventists are Levites at this point, because the two groups ended up as priests, Levites, where movement people were known to be priests with the wise understanding, that Daniel speaks about. And so it remained to be seen that all Seventh-day Adventists are Levites. In other words, they all on the ship of Alexandria, and Elder Terry goes into this and so on. Everybody else other than Paul, Aristarchus, and Luke are Levites. And we'll unpack that another time, but I mean, that's where these are heathen people, pagans, if you like, that, how can we come to that and say that? But at this moment, I don't want to go there because I'm wanting to get to a couple of other points this evening. So we've got the big line, we've got the fractal lines, we've got the agricultural model, the plowing, the early rain, the latter rain, and the harvest. And we've got, not sure why it's doing that so far. Anyway, we've got, and I'll use the bigger line because it might be easier for you to see. The dispensation 2001 to Sunday law. It's a big stretch, in a sense, on the line of the 144,000. Spans more of history, recent history, 2001 all the way through to Sunday law, wherever we are going to date that at some future time. At any rate, the Battle of Raphia, my cursor, the Battle of Raphia and the Battle of Panium, and those are two battles that turn up in the book of Daniel, chapter 11, Nora, that became sort of like CNN and Fox, symbolizing the two streams of information. We have terms that we use as symbols, symbolizing things. So the Battle of Raphia, the Battle of Panium, and Raphia is at the increase of knowledge, which for the line of the 144,000 was 2019. And the Battle of Panium is at the formalization, and that is on the line of the 144,000 for this dispensation in 2021. And then some of the things that I want to address from, well, Elder Terry's studies, but also a little bit more that I was looking into as well. And that is 2018 is what we designate as the Midnight Cry. Why, Lucas? Why is 2018 symbolizing the Midnight Cry?
I understand it to be when the message on Acts 27 was brought to us by Elder Tess.
Where and when, do you remember?
Well, she started at the School of the Prophets there in Arkansas, and then
Yes.
then it moved to Europe. Yeah.
Well, the actual day, October 3rd, there in Arkansas. And Nora,
Yeah.
this was the School of the Prophets, generally offered a 3-month training study course. And Elder Jeff Pippinger, Future for America, was involved. It was a little separate in a sense, the School of the Prophets, but at the same time affiliated with FFA. And Elder Tess was there as a student, but as she presented on October 3rd, she actually had 2 messages that day. One of them in the morning had to do with conspiracy theories and politics. And the evening study that she also presented was presenting the date of November 9th, 2019, as being close of probation for the priests. And just for a moment, I'll quickly move my mouse over this line of the priests. You'll see that 4th waymark, time of the end, 1989, followed by 2001, 9/11, followed by Sunday Law, 2014, followed by close of probation, 2019. And the date, because there were multiple November 9th events externally that pointed to November 9th being the date. I mean, it went from events in Europe, events in North America, historical events, just, yeah, a lot of evidences, and tied in with that. That was going to be how the Sunday Law dispensation from 2014 it concluded in 2019 at a shut door. Anyway, and then the next one going to 2021 was the second Advent, close of probation to second Advent dispensation for the priest. Anyway, the Midnight Cry, thank you, Lucas. 2018, that line actually, it's a short line, but it doesn't get put on the line of the 144,000, nor does 2020 get put on the line of the 144,000, which is why I've just put them in green there. Make a distinction that you hopefully remember. It doesn't go on the line of the 144,000, but that Midnight Cry message, losing my point here, that Midnight Cry message in 2018 had to be accepted or rejected. And a part of that message had been the early, I'll say, vestiges of feminism, because some of the reason why some, including some leadership, rose up against the message had to do with feminism. The fact that Elder Tess, number one, was female. Number two, that she was from Australia. Number three, that she was a student there. And I mean, the fact that she was from Australia, it had been believed, and these are some of the vestiges of I'll say Adventist baggage, that of course it's going to be the glorious land, the United States of America, where any message, just as in Millerite history, any messages of truth and light are going to originate from. And anywhere beyond that, such as Europe or Australia, Oceania, are out of the question. So there were many present in person. Lucas, were you there at School of the Prophets?
No, unfortunately, no.
No, okay. Ali, you were at School of the Prophets later, but I don't. Were you there? Were you there in 2018?
Yeah, I was there, not as a student, but I knew Tess actually at ACE in 2017. My year at FFA was in 2016. The year after, I went to ACE in England, Parminder School. That's where I met Tess. And then she went, when she went there, I was there for a short time in 2018. I can't remember why. It was for a camp meeting, I think. And then shared the meeting in France. After she shared it in the US, she shared it in France. I was at the France one. That's when I was getting around really easy back then. And that week I was at France is when she shared it for the first time over there. And what was that, 2018? Yeah. And then the year after, 2019, that's when COVID hit.
Well, very tail end of 2019. Some people were getting sick. 2020 was the big year, in
Well,
essence, where they started realizing pandemic and it was spreading around the world and
they
so
were
on.
shutting,
But
well,
2019, pardon
shutting
me?
down they were shutting down the opportunity to travel to those kind of
Oh, that's
already
right. And that happened in 2020. I
20,
mean, flights were just, nobody was
yeah, 2020. Okay.
traveling, period. Yeah.
Because
But 29, sorry, go ahead.
I was supposed to go back to France for another week of health to teach, but it got canceled because of COVID. But anyway, Tessa's Midnight Cry message was already out by that time.
Mm-hmm. And that's it, Nora,
Yeah.
just for your benefit. 2019 ended up being when the split, like the Midnight Cry messaging happening at, I'll just say FFA, And 2019 was when we actually had a Canadian camp meeting where Elder Tess and Tyler Senna presented as presenters. Elder Tabot had been on the schedule, but he graciously stepped aside to just allow more opportunity for dialoguing and resting our brains a little between all the messages. And it was after that Elder Tess went to Europe, pardon me. And it was while and I know they call it the Portugal meeting, so I think it was maybe where Tamina was at in Portugal, or I'm not sure if it was France or Portugal, French as well. But at any rate, at the end of those was when the German International Camp meeting in 2019, the first international camp meeting was held that tail end of August 2019, and that was when, in essence, the split with FFA splitting from this movement occurred. Anyway, the Midnight Cry had to be either accepted or rejected. And because the message involved, pardon me, feminism, but then later on in 2020, and I'm not going to go through all of the details and get bogged down. Radical feminism became the theme and was, in essence, the test, also having to be accepted or rejected. And so it turned out that there really, in our movement, there really were three groups. And I'll read it off my board behind because it's a little bit easier for me to read too. The first group, accept and cherish the light. So 100% in that group. Number two group, reject the light. So 100% out. And then the third group is, in a sense, maybe a little like the mixed multitude in the Exodus departing from Egypt. But the third group, accept, but don't cherish the light. And they're careless with the message that God gave. And probably at some point in our own journey in the movement, we would look back and we would think to ourselves, you know what, I might have been in that group, or at least for a little portion of time, or, you know, I sort of went into the doldrums and I sort of came back out, or this or that, whatever our experience is, where we maybe would think that we're in that group. But that isn't necessarily the case. I mean, only each of us individually can examine our own hearts to see whether we're in the faith or not. But that third group definitely did stay in the movement and, in a sense, have an appearance of agreeing with the message of the Midnight Cry, and as it moved along, even to radical feminism and onwards, appearing to accept, but in reality didn't really buy into either the full message or had doubts, had arguments against, or ignored portions of the message. In other words, didn't live it, you know, whatever. So three groups. And then there's a broadside quotation there, which I'm not going to go to. Broadside 1, April 6, 1846, paragraph 2 and paragraph 7 delineate the first and the second group nicely, but. And Elder Tess, but also Elder Terry, have reminded us, well, taught us and then reminded us that the events of 2014, pardon me, the light of the midnight cry, and we had this with some of the studies on the vision of the path and different other ones. I remember Jonathan doing an excellent study on that, but the light of the midnight cry goes all the way through, and this is in great controversy and probably elsewhere in Spirit of Prophecy, but goes all the way through to the second advent, the light of the midnight cry. And so therefore, Elder Terry draws the parallel that the events of 2014, so what's happening internally is reflected externally. The events of 2014, therefore, go all the way through as well. And then Elder Terry, in her study, and I will briefly go through this. I'm not sure that well, actually, maybe before we get to that, what I want to highlight for a moment, and I don't think I can zoom on this board. Not as clever as some people know how to do various things. Anyway, this area up here, and I just want to have us have a look at that for a moment. Unsealing of a message, increase of knowledge, formalization, shut door, test. And as I said earlier, the other model that can be used as well, Boston, oops, that's my pointer, Boston at the unsealing of a message, Concord, increase of knowledge, Exeter, formalization, and then I think most often the word test is used there by Elder Test and subsequently by most of us. So what is your understanding of this model? Give me any information that comes to mind off the top of your head. Sorry about the flipping of slides.
That it derives from the Millerite history.
Okay, gotcha. You want to elaborate at all? If not, that's fine.
That it goes for the message that were given in Boston by Samuel Snow.
Okay, July 21st, 1844.
Yes. And then it was given back. Is it? I hope I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so it was given back August, sorry.
What?
Well,
August
there was
14th.
the Concord, and that was the waymark actually we were leaving out earlier tonight too, but the Concord camp was August 1st. And then, yes, you're correct. The camp meeting in Exeter, August 12th to the 14th, or to the 17th, rather, forgive me. And Samuel Snow presented, and Kaji, you were saying the 14th, and that's my understanding as well. The 14th, he sort of rode up, and Joseph Bates stepped aside. Samuel Snow rode up, a woman present said, we have meet in due season. There's present truth, and so Joseph Bates stepped out of the lectern and allowed Samuel Snow to speak. And then the next day, August 15th, he spoke again, and a little less rushed and so on. And that became the affirmation as they looked at behold, the bridegroom cometh. The Millerites from July 21st, 1844 onwards knew that this was a message that was starting to swell and to build, and they came to recognize it as the message of Jesus' imminent second return. And then the shut door came as October 22nd, 1844 came. The people, that there had been 50,000 or thereabouts in number, and it dropped down to 50 because Jesus, of course, didn't come. He went from the holy place of the heavenly sanctuary into the most holy place. So those that left at that point had a shut door, and then on time went. And even William Miller almost made shipwreck of faith. God in mercy laid him to sleep for all his faithfulness and all that he'd done, as he was worn out and got older by that point in time, and so on. Anyway, so thank you, Katja. Dispensation, that's one dispensation, and each dispensation gets divided with those waymarks, that model, the unsealing of a message, and it fits in with the first angel's message, the increase of knowledge, the formalization of that message. I mean, in Millerite history, it's 1798, then in 1818, William Miller's just young. He's not even at that point a full believer in message. And in the Bible and truth and so on, but at the increase of knowledge, 1888, he's studying, and then his credentialing and starting to preach, and known more as he's formalized his message, and he's out on the road preaching it and so on. Anyway, so each dispensation, the priests, the plowing portion, the early rain portion, the latter rain portion, the harvest for the 144,000, the time of the end to 9/11, that's a dispensation. And it gets divided into this model, wherein there are two shorter waymarks that fit with events. And as in the 2001 to the Sunday Law model, it gets known as 2019, 2021 for the 144,000. So we already went through. But the point I'm wanting to make is that there is a continuation. That one dispensation, that model fits, in a sense, in every dispensation on our lines. And once that shut door is reached, and it indicates this acceptance or rejection of the testing message that was unsealed at the beginning of that dispensation, at that shut door, if you've accepted the light, that door opens. You've walked in the light, you've lived up to all the light that you have, and you walk through into the next dispensation, if I can put it that way, phrase it that way. If you've rejected the light that came here through the increase of knowledge on that light, you were hearing things, watching things, listening to things, attending camp meetings, whatever, studying. If that additional information, you're sort of, yeah, not sure if I believe that fully, and anyway, up through to the formalization where often it is things are going to be written down, things are in essence quantified. There's some tangible messages, notes, videos, different things. It's formalized and has been fine-tuned and understood better. Then it turns out that you've accepted all the way through, you come down or along. Really, I didn't have any space, so I had to do it layered like that, line upon line. But you enter into the next dispensation. But if you have been a reluctant listener, a naysayer through much of the unfolding of the light, you will come up to a shut door whereby it works out that you are not, you're not living the light that you've received, and therefore you're not going to accept any of the additional light that does come. So it's like with the first angel's message, the second angel's message, the third angel's message. If we don't accept the first angel's message, fear God and give glory to him, we aren't going to be ready to accept the second angel's message. In fact, we'll actually reject it and turn away from it. And therefore, the third angel's message is not going to help us at all. And of course, in Millerite history, that's exactly what the Protestant churches did. They closed the doors to William Miller and rejected the light of the first angel and the midnight cry, second angel message. So if we think of God's hand, I'm not on screen, but I'll hold my hand up anyway to the camera. But if we think of God's hand, and we've got the 5 major waymarks from Spirit of Prophecy, Great Controversy, chapter 39, I believe it is. Either 38 or 39. I think it's 39. Correct me if any of you know otherwise. Anyway, 1989, 2001, Sunday Law, Rose of Probation, Second Advent. That's biblical, that's Spirit of Prophecy, that's Adventism understood. So 5 waymarks constitute the 5 fingers of God. And the spaces between your fingers, we call them dispensations, refer to them as dispensations. Could be ages, could be time periods. We have used in the past a point in time, a period of time, phrasing like that. So dispensations are legitimate, biblical, in Spirit of Prophecy terms. Ellen White references ages, periods. Not certain if she does use the word dispensations. I honestly haven't done a word search on it in Spirit of Prophecy, but they're all synonyms.
Ellen White talks about 2 dispensations only.
Oh, that's right, Annabelle. Which would be, of course, which 2?
well, before the cross and after the cross.
Mhm. The Christian era, oh, era is another word, but the Christian dispensation,
Mhm.
or, you know, in some cases equating the other dispensation with the Old Testament, New
Some
Testament.
conservative Adventists hate the word dispensations, and yeah, they connect it with oh, I forget the name.
Tim LaHaye and
Yes.
dispensationalism.
Yes, right.
And yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is a false theology, takes on a lot of different vernacular, different words, different terms. And that became a real sensitivity within Adventism. That word dispensationalism, dispensation was like a buzzword that you know zinged, and right away people would draw back. And I think in the beginning, as it started being used, I believe originally by Elder Test, but certainly also by Elder Parminder, some in the movement did have hesitations and reservations, but anyway, it's okay. So I'll move
Debbie,
on. Yes, go ahead,
Debbie,
Nora. Yeah.
did you say that the 5 waymarks are in great controversy?
Yes,
What chapter was that?
in the chapter, and Lucas, Katja, Annabelle, figure out. I'm pretty sure it's chapter 39. That seems to stick in my memory as the chapter.
Okay, thank you.
It's
Thank you.
basically, and Ellen White, I mean, even in early writings, Nora, or in spiritual gifts, the concepts of time of the end, and in Millerite history, the second waymark is April 19th, 1844, to do with the calendar and the I'll say the little disappointment in a sense, because originally they were sort of projecting that Jesus would come in 1843. Sorry, go ahead. Say that again, Nora, please.
I didn't say anything. I don't know who did.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought that was you. Anyway, a second waymark there in Spirit of Prophecy is a waymark that incorporates Millerite history. So it has August 11th, 1840, the fall of the Ottoman Empire, on one line of Millerite history, but it also has the date April 19th, 1844, time of the end being 1798, April 19th, 1844, because as I say, there was some misunderstandings with the Millerites, and eventually got sorted out with the charts. They realized that some of their reckoning had been incorrect. And so April 19th, and it had to do with the feasts and different things, and because the Passover gets delayed a month, and you know, a variety of different things, which we won't go into right now. But at any rate, there are two dates that combine, or that on different lines with Millerite history, are pointing out that second waymark. And then there's Sunday law. I'm sure you're familiar with in Spirit of Prophecy, Ellen White writing in terms of a Sunday law,
Right. Thank
and
you.
then close of probation and second advent, right? So thank you for that question. Oh, and the other thing on that, I wanted to specify that the 1989, the Sunday law, close of probation, second advent. Well, actually, rather than saying 1989, instead I'll say time of the end, not the year. I'll say time of the end. Sunday law, close of probation, and second advent are definitely in spirit of prophecy. But the 2001, also known as 9/11, but it's broader than just the, 9/11. So we expanded it to the year 2001 instead of necessarily connecting it just to, like 9/11 often just gets limited. So as a symbol, it was expanded to the full year, 2001. There's no spirit of prophecy referencing to it. Instead, it's, I believe, if I remember correctly, I actually remember Elder Perminder using the word invented. We in the movement invented that date. And sometimes 9 Testimonies, page 11, in spirit of prophecy was in the earlier days used to equate that with 9/11, because Ellen White talks in terms of New York and buildings coming down and firemen not able to stop the conflagration. Their equipment didn't work, and et cetera, et cetera. So it sounds a lot like 9/11, but in more recent years, we came to understand that that really is just a harbinger or a warning of events that will happen at the end of time. They're not the events, but it was a harbinger of what it somewhat will look like. Anyway, so I'll leave this. I was going to go a little bit further with this, but we're getting very rapidly out of time, and I just wanted to cover quickly some of the last little portions of this. 2014 events. So if the Midnight Cry follows right through to the second advent, Elder Terry's point is that the events of 2014 go all the way through as well. And I believe Elder Tess did make that statement as well. So the main ones involving the US government that Elder Terry latched onto, because 2014 events, external events, Nora, there was a list of about 26 things that happened in 2014 externally. Because coming back to the priest line for a moment, and just to fill in a little wee bit of information. For the priests, the Sunday law is 2014. Sorry, I didn't put the date there, but these are all 2014 because of lack of space. But 9/11 to the Sunday law for the priests had 2 shorter waymarks. I was going to ask somebody, but I'll just say it because we are running out of time. 2009 and 2012. 2009 was the 2520. Wasn't so much fully introduced, or I'll say initially introduced in 2009, but Elder Parmenter did a series called the 2520 Revealed, of videos recorded that we mark the 2520 at 2009. And then the second waymark was 2012. And so, of course, this repeating pattern. There is the unsealing of a message, because this is a Boston at 2001. Unsealing of a message, and then there's going to be the increase of knowledge, which was 2009, and certainly the 2520 became a foundation for a lot of other things that got built off it, including the 151 and the 126. Anyway, and the 2012 was initially it was actually called I don't remember if it was called Prediction Before Midnight. It was probably called Midnight at that point. I think the 2009 would have been the Prediction Before Midnight. But at any rate, we won't go there because we don't use that terminology anymore. But midnight still gets used. But midnight was a prediction that Elder Parminder made, which I think if any of you have listened to the South African studies, he's unpack more information on that. But 2012 was a prediction that in 2014, there would be a Sunday law. And Elder Tess in her studies uses this example of accepting or rejecting that 2014, people had to accept or reject, and it was a case of accepting, yes, because there's nothing challenging, but then it turns out that as time goes on a little bit more and things get more formalized and so on, that people end up feeling uncomfortable because it costs something to accept it. And that certainly played out in later dispensations on the line of the priests. Quite a bit more of a cost in terms of well, some of the subsequent history. Okay, so Elder Terry is bringing out 3 particular events out of those 26 external events for the year 2014. And she's doing it for a reason, because she's wanting to make a point in reference to the Sunday law. Purging the Republican Party of the moderates, that was happening in 2014, that already preparatory to the upcoming 2016 election. 2014 would have been a year of a midterm election. So some governors up for gubernatorial races, a portion of the Senate, I think they do a third. So a third of the senators up for reappointment, and then some other kinds of elections, representatives of the House in Congress, the chamber of the House of Representatives up for re-election or trying to get elected. So purging the Republican Party of moderates. Does anyone want to weigh in terms of some of the effect that had, or any specifics perhaps that you want to add? It basically, in a nutshell, is indicating that already the movement further right is percolating and getting rid of any centrists in the Republican Party who sort of maybe straddle the center. If we've got the right, we've got the left, and we've got the center, they're straddling center, or they may even be a little bit left of center, or just a little wee bit right of center. And getting rid of them clears the way for a more extreme agenda. Second point, McConnell blocking the judicial appointments, Obama trying to get through some appointments to the Supreme Court. But it's not only just the Supreme Court. There are like Sixth Circuit Court, the Ninth Circuit Court, and some of them tend more towards conservative leaning anyway. And at any rate, every president appoints as terms expire, and there are openings on the various levels of court. They appoint people and have advisors advise them. And of course, with the Republican Party, the Federalists have weighed in a lot, promoting people that then end up getting onto the various levels of court. In particular, of course, is the Supreme Court. Anyway, the third thing, Burwell versus Hobby Lobby Stores Inc. And that was the birth control religious freedom case from 2014. And we've dealt with that in previous sessions, but even with Sakai's study on Sabbath, some of this weighed in terms of basically what happened was they struck down Obamacare, the 2010 Obamacare, and ended up which made it that the Department of Health and Human Services, this HHS branch of the US government, that now Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to be in charge of, if he gets confirmed. At any rate, the HHS had a contraceptives mandate whereby employers had to provide birth control under their insurance plans to employees. And so it was struck down by this Hobby Lobby court case by the Supreme Court. And it weighed in with the Religious Freedom Restoration Act was brought into the argument, and the religious liberty and that we don't have to provide things that we as employers, as companies, don't agree with. And the phrasing was the exemption for profit closely held businesses. So in other words, just a few people at the top in the business, and in some cases, some of them family, because the Hobby Lobby Stores Inc. was a craft store franchise. The Green family were the CEOs and all the top echelon of that company, and they expanded all across the US, and they professed Christianity, and that they disagree with birth control and contraception, and there's no way they're going to provide that to any of their employees. And so they were the ones that brought the case forward, and it made it as high as the Supreme Court. Okay, so those three elements of external events were what Elder Terry focused in on for 2014. And I'm just let me just see. Oh, sorry, I did want to do the middle section. 2014, informing the Sunday law. from 2014 onward, there were chances for the Republicans to turn things around. In other words, not to just go in lockstep with Donald Trump. Of course, he was campaigning through 2015 and wasn't elected as president until 2016. And that, of course, figures in with the story of Pyrrhus and the 2016 election and Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and all the story there. But I want to highlight the opportunities the Republicans had to not fall in line with Donald Trump and his cult of personality, but instead to and his conspiracy theories, many of which he was being fed, but which he also latched onto and believed. And vaccination is caused by autism is caused by vaccination. I have a woman in the office, and her little boy didn't have autism. He was vaccinated, and a few days later he had autism. Things like that he was saying on the campaign trail. But certainly many of the Republicans had opportunity to step apart, to step back, to step aside from the direction that things were starting to take, certainly under Donald Trump as he came into power in 2016. But so 2015, he was nominated by the GOP. So they picked him. Everyone had sort of laughed originally when he announced his candidacy. And many of the Republicans and some of the leadership, Paul Ryan and so on, they thought it was a joke. Even the Democrats as well didn't really take it seriously, just believing that he would never win. Anyway, the 2016 election obviously occurred. And then another chance when the Republicans could turn things around. I mean, the election, Donald Trump getting elected, Republicans could have voted independent, or they could have, gritted their teeth and voted Democrat. But he was elected as the Republican candidate that became president of the United States in his first term. So December 18th, 2019, another opportunity, and it was an actual turning point. Trump's first impeachment. And he was up on charges in recent time that obviously all now have been nullified. But abuse of power was the one charge brought forward by Nancy Pelosi, actually, I don't know, but abuse of power. The call with Zelensky, the quid pro quo, which is a situation, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You get something, I get something. We're both winners. So quid pro quo was being argued. Was there a quid pro quo in that call with Zelensky? Basically, Trump was wanting Zelensky and those in Ukraine to dig up dirt on particularly Hunter Biden, but as it applied to Joe Biden, his father, to basically discredit Joe Biden as a leader able to hold office. And so the Ukrainians had been promised $391 million in security aid by the USA, and Trump said, we're going to withhold that money. So that first impeachment, and what's the man? Mitt Romney. was the only one that voted, of the Republican side, that voted to impeach Donald Trump. Pretty sure that was with the first impeachment. He was the only one that voted with the Democrats and got blacklisted as a result. The second charge in that first impeachment was the obstruction of Congress. Another opportunity for Republicans to change the course of history was January 13th, 2021, with Trump's second impeachment involving the incitement of the insurrection for January the 6th. And his first impeachment, Donald Trump was acquitted of February 5th, 2020. So just basically 2 months after the impeachment had been announced. His second impeachment, he was acquitted 1 month. He was impeached January 13th, and he was acquitted February 13th of 2021. And then the other opportunity, obviously a big one, January 6th, 2022, Trump's rally that is viewed as incitement for the insurrection, the storming of the US Capitol building after that rally. And the idea being to prevent the certification of Joe Biden as president, as the lawful winner of the 2020 election, which Trump, even to this day, still says was stolen from him. He never did believe that. Right at the very beginning, his advisors, his people close to him in the administration reported in the Senate hearings that Trump himself knew he had lost. But he fabricated this whole narrative and probably had advisors who sided with him in that, and some of them paying the price. But at any rate, chances for the Republicans to turn the train around, but it reached a place where shipwreck was going to be inevitable, and probably with the impeachments, that first impeachment, Elder Tess actually is the one that puts that as a turning point. Okay, last little bit, and we'll finish off there. Hopefully I haven't lost anybody. Main elements in our movement, and I'm drawing this not from Elder Terry, but from Elder Parminder in South Africa, just within the recent few days. He brings out some of the internal things that were happening in 2014. And as I was saying earlier, he goes through the story of Elder Jeff as the first angel, and the situation where a message in 2012 that was predicting a Sunday law for 2014 using methodology and determining that that's when it's going to happen. It was privately studied, and it was a message that Elder Parminder certainly afterwards clarified, but I believe also at the time, some of what he was saying, and definitely in 2019, he clarified this as another Sunday law was approaching, that you won't see anything. Nothing much will change. There isn't going to be a a big law passed, it's going to almost not even be a blip on the year. And that's in essence exactly what did end up happening. A lot of external events, but nothing was on mainstream media's big screen as being the event of 2014. Instead, it was a lot of I won't say little because they're not inconsequential, but a lot of different things that happened, and it fit together to paint the picture of quote unquote, with air quotes, Sunday law occurring in that dispensation, or at the end of the dispensation, on the line of the priests, 9/11 to Sunday law, with 2014 being the Sunday law. And the third entity in the equation, there was an angel, and we would call it first angel, but Elder Jeff, a message, and it was to do with the Sunday law, because all of the messages are pointing, providing more information on the end of the great controversy and what's happening and what's going to be happening. And Sunday law is very much a part of that in our vernacular. So the messenger wasn't a member, as Elder Perminder pointed out. He actually had been ostracized, and he uses the term disfellowshipped, and was definitely, even at the time he presented some of his study in 2012, was outside leadership. He wasn't, he was a member. He wasn't a leader. And so some have drawn the connection 10 years later, how in 2024 we have what some are saying is a similar situation. We have some referencing Elder Terry as an angel. We have a message, Sunday law, July, specifically the 18th, but July 2024, it was privately studied out. And a messenger who was a member and not an angel, because although some would like to have Elder Terry designated as an angel, meaning first, second, third angel of Revelation 14. She's not an angel. And time setting was the test in the dispensation for the priests, where 2001 to the Sunday law, where 2012 was the increase of knowledge and the formalization, or pardon me, 2009 was the increase of knowledge, 2012 was the formalization. And it had to do with time setting. 2520 coming out in 2009. The prediction was time, setting a time. There's going to be a Sunday law, 2014. And so it had to do with time. And we came to understand that that third way mark in every dispensation will have some aspect of time attached to it. But at that point in time, in 2012, the movement generally rejected the study on the Sunday law. And so in 2024, time setting was actually introduced earlier, but it was more broadly accepted in 2018 with the midnight cry and with the November 9th, 2019 close of probation for the priests. Time introduced. So the time setting fit that it was accepted. We believe in time setting now, and time is an aspect. Even though in 2018, with the Midnight Cry, there was no date ever applied to Sunday law. We always, on the big line, the 144,000, we always had just Sunday law. And even on the priest line, it wasn't until as time continued that we ended up putting on, well, certainly the close of probation 2019 one we knew in 2018, but the second Advent waymark didn't have a date to it until closer to 2021, or maybe even that was one of the ones in hindsight. Oh, no, I don't believe it was. Sorry. It would have been shortly before. Anyway, the question remains, when is the Sunday law? And as Lucas was saying earlier, July 18th, 2024 is passed, and he had given two options. November 5th, the American election is passed. Some have felt that it would be January 20th, 2025, that would be the Sunday law anyway, with the inauguration of Trump. That's still future, only 2 weeks away, or 12 days away, but is still future. And then in some cases, there are some that have believed another date. At the International Camp meeting, a few people weighed in with later in January. Someone was saying, into February, maybe even into March, would be more when a Sunday law perhaps would happen. Anyway, further thoughts on the Sunday law. With what happened over the last, some of the interactions with chat and with just different things. And we've got the South African camp meeting ended, and we're coming into the German camp meeting now. Each subsequent camp meeting and study will probably have more informed evidence and different things. I know, sort of, Ali, hearkening back to what you had said earlier on, the whole thing of reassessing, and we can think that we know things and have some things nailed down, but sometimes it turns out that, what, that doesn't actually fit. Either methodology falls apart, threading things, following a theme, taking it all the way through, or some of the evidence doesn't add up. And I know even with some of the research I've done in terms of some of the things in Elder Terry's studies, they are plural, I haven't necessarily been able to find, or I found some different things. I'll give you two examples. Actually, it was just even earlier today. the Battle of, let me just quickly check. I've forgotten myself which one it was. Oh, yes, the Battle of Argos, where Pyrrhus is killed. One date given for the fall of Tarentum was 270. Actually, I found that a couple of different places, but I did find one place as well where it said 272. I was trying to follow that through a little bit, some of the Roman history and, and so on. But anyway, just a little, and our sources online are not necessarily fully accurate, for sure, all the time. So we're constrained with where we can get our information from a little bit. But at any rate, and there was a second example I wanted to share. Oh, the word elephant. I've got it in my notes. But the word elephant, Elder Terry used the word, the Punic language, the language of Carthage, Carthaginians. Punic stems from Phoenician, so it's connected to the heritage of the Phoenicians, but they end up over in northern Africa. The city of Carthage, obviously, but modern day Tunisia. Anyway, the name, I believe it was Caesar, meaning elephant, and I traced there were some people that had posted things on a social platform, Quora. I don't think it was Reddit, but Quora, one or two like that said a bit of a story of so and so Caesar and the heritage all the way down through, and the name means elephant. But then going to more credible sources, in a sense, I will be honest, I didn't find anything. I went to various translation things that did ancient languages, and pil, P-I-L, generally was the word that ended up coming up for elephant in the Punic language. But at any rate, it coming back to my original question off the recording in terms of how we see things right now, I am tending to study, watch, sift, weigh the evidences. And at this point, where I had originally more tipped in one direction of the various options being offered, I'm realizing I don't know very much, and I'm going to reserve any opinion until I've studied more and really followed the methodology. Anyway, with that, I'm going to end. I probably went way over time. I wasn't able to fully check time. So anyway, I will close with prayer and release us from, unless after I have prayer, and I'll finish the recording if there are any questions or comments. Anyway, let me just stop the share and we'll close with prayer. Dear God of heaven and earth, we want to go home. And there's a busyness and an accelerated pace that some are experiencing. There's a tiredness, perhaps, that has affected some of us. There is a yearning after the truth and a desire to not be found wanting, but to be ready to weather through the dispensation that we are now in and the subsequent ones that will finish off this earth's history. So we just ask for your wisdom, for your continuing love, your continuing mercy, and your blessing upon each one of us and our loved ones. And we ask and pray this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. There we I know. And the recording. Oops.